This week has been busy in the cricketing world. From the ECB being plunged into more trouble, a certain Indian player relinquishing Test captaincy. I think we all know who it is. England losing the fifth Test after being in a secure position, and so much more. This episode is jam-packed with content. Without further ado, let's get started. I think we have to start with the Ashes. England just, I think 20 minutes ago, just lost their fifth Test after being in a pretty strong position. I think it was like 68 for 0, and they needed 271 to win, and they had the whole of day 5 to bat as well. But somehow they managed to lose an extra 9 wickets in that in the last session, plus one just at the end of the second session. And they managed to collapse to something like 124 all out, even though I think a lot of Australian players at the end of session 2 would have been pretty worried that England were actually going to mount a fight and could actually win this Test, and the series would be 3-1. So how did they lose, Amar? How did they manage to collapse that much? I don't understand.
Well, I think it's been kind of trend in for the whole of Ashes, like England just having one good partnership and then just collapsing after that. So I'm not sure. I think it just might be I'm not sure why this happens, because it was a pretty big collapse and yeah.
Yeah, no, I think, and the really surprising thing is, it's that normally the partnerships between Virat and Milan or some other more significant partnership in the middle of our order, but then actually it was our top 2 batsmen, Zach Crawley and Rory Burns, who actually made a 68-run partnership, and both batted pretty well. Rory Burns unfortunately getting out, ball hitting his glove as he tried to leave the ball and crashing onto the stumps. And then after that, it was just regular wickets. I think Dawid Malan getting out. Then you had Crawley, Stokes, and so on and so forth, and it just kept going. Obviously, for anyone who did watch it, you would have known that there's a lot of seam movement involved. There was a lot of lateral movement. It was swinging. The moment it was swinging after it bounced as well, so it's actually pretty surprising. Like it was a lot of movement, and it was probably as much as the day before as well. But it was not exactly easy conditions to bat. But the fact that England needed 271 runs to win the Test, and they had 40 overs today and an extra 80, probably most likely 80 overs tomorrow, so it's 120 overs, meant that there wasn't exactly an issue of scoring, and there was no rush to score. We could have just defended and plodded at 1-2 runs and over, and then ramped it up if need be. I think at one point, and this is the first time it's happened in the series, the WinViz, the win predictor, said England had the largest chance of winning, which was 52% to Australia's 48%, and that's not happened in the series at all. So it was looking like they were going to win. Everyone thought England would actually have a chance. Everyone knows that England batting is going to collapse. Would you say, Emma? Would you say it's mainly the poor batting or good bowling that took the wicket? So which one?
I think it was probably a combination of both. Like there was some very soft dismissals like Rory Burns, Sam Billings. Then there were other just unlucky ones like Root dismissal was very unlucky. So I think it was a combination of both. And also Stokes, he's like there were 2 men deep, and he could have just ducked to his, but he instead played the pull shot and got caught in the teeth. So yeah.
Yeah, I just think England just didn't have a control. Obviously, it's good to go out positive and bat positively, but if you're gonna bat positively, you've also got to have that control and know which balls to defend, which balls not to. Zach Crawley's was a bit, it was just lack of foot movement. I think, it was a full ball pitch. It was pretty much driving length. He'd done a similar ball a couple of overs before where he'd driven and it hit the stumps, but it would have gone, if the stumps went in the way, it would have gone for 4. It was a good shot. So that was a bit unfortunate. And and I think generally it was a combination of putting pressure by the Australian bowlers, rigorous line and length, but then England, not really knowing the answer to it, not having an idea of what to do. Do you think there's still hope though in England's batting, because they were very close to winning the Test and they should have capitalised on it? Only 270 runs to win, and you had that many overs, and as long as you survive the evening today, and you could have come out in the afternoon tomorrow and batted well, and it would have been less of a challenge in the conditions. Do you think England should have capitalised on it, or do you think it was pretty much destined for them to lose?
I think they should have capitalized on it. They had a very good open partnership, which like set the base for them. And then they've got a decent middle order, so they should have capitalized on that.
Yeah, I don't think it's not reflective of all the hard work the bowlers put in the previous inning. Mark Wood taking 6 wickets, getting Australia all out for something in the something under 150, which is really impressive for an Australian batting side that scored 400 pretty regularly. Yeah, so then I guess now the focus is on the next series, not in Australia, just any next Test matches. Who do you think is going to be kept at the core of England's team? Who do you think will be our first players named on the team sheet, whether they're batsmen or bowlers, just generally any player? Who do you think is going to be like the first 3 players who are going to be on the team sheet every Test?
So I think Zach Crawley will. He ended the series very well, and I think so. Wait, do you say 3 people?
Yeah, 3 or more. It doesn't really matter. Just the core players of the team.
Okay, so I think Milan. I think he had a tough series, but he started off well. I think he has the ability to like score big runs, and obviously Root.
Yeah.
So the keeper's kind of like the keeper. I think Bester could be a keeper. He's scored hundreds. He has a good pair of hands behind the stumps. And then the bowlers, you can kind of rotate between Anderson, Broad, Robinson, and Wood. The spinners still undecided.
Yeah, I think for me, I don't know. In terms of core batsmen, I would always go. I would obviously Root. I'm still not convinced completely by Stokes. I think he's done enough to show he's good enough to be the core of the team. So Root, Stokes, and then Crawley would be third. And then apart from that, I would keep it flexible because it depends on who's in form, who's not. Because Rory Burns, if he's doing okay. He's shown he can. He's got the shots, but he's just got to make sure. We don't want any soft dismissals. It was 2 soft dismissals in the first innings. He got run out, and the second innings, he was he hit the glove and onto the stumps when leaving the ball. So that was a bit disappointing. So and it really depends on who's in form. And bowlers, I wouldn't actually keep it restricted at all. I would just keep it dependent on conditions. But I think Stuart Broad's done enough to be considered for every Test. Jimmy Anderson, no. If it's in England, then yes, of course. But outside of England, I still don't think this series he hasn't lit up the entire series. His economy's been amazing and he's taken a few wickets, but not enough to be like, okay, we want Jimmy for every 5 or 3 out of the 5 Tests. We're resting for 2. I think it's just flexible on the pitch and things like that. But yeah, who do you think's going to find it pretty tough to get themselves back in the team who's just been dropped, or who do you think from this Test might get dropped out of all the the 11 in the team?
I think Ollie Pope is a very good athlete, but like the ways he gets out, he gets out it always just looks very soft. Like for the future, he'd be very good, but I think he'll find it hard to get back into the team in the summer.
Yeah, no. Ollie Pope, no, he can score a good temperament and he's got a lot of good shots, but he hasn't performed at all in in the top level. Like at least Rory Burns have scored quite a few 50s and I think a couple of centuries as well. Same with Zach Crawley, 267 against Pakistan. But Ollie Pope hasn't scored many big runs, so we don't even know if it's possible for him to score those centuries. High 70s plus, even 150s, things like that. We don't know because we haven't seen enough of it. So I think he should go back to the drawing board 100% and, focus. Do you think there's a way back for Dom Sibley or Hasib Hamid?
I think Hamid has to get back to this, but I'm not sure about Sibley. Hamid got a few starts in the series, but in the first Test he got a start. I think he can back, but Sibley, I'm not really sure about it.
Yeah. I think credit needs to go to the Australian bowlers as well. You know, in order to rip through an entire Test team, take 9 wickets in one session, and you know that session there was still at least I think still probably 10 overs left, something like that. But you know, they ripped through the entire team, 9 wickets in one session, and then 1 wicket just before the end, just at the end of the second session. You've just taken so many wickets so quickly, and I think the main player for Australia, the standout, is 100% Green. I think he's played really, really well. Cameron Green, he's done so impressively. His batting average is in the low 30s, which is good for his position. He comes in like 6'7", and his bowling average is like 15 or something like that. That's absolutely stunning for someone playing their first Ashes series at the age of 22. What do you think about him?
Yeah, I think his bowling's improved a lot compared to last year. And also his batting, like he struggled at the start of the series, but then I think he started batting better and better, like after Melbourne's, Sydney, but I think his batting really well in all of his matches. He improved a lot.
Yeah, he doesn't like if you look at the England batsmen, half of them are like worried about getting out to some Australian bowler because you know the Australians are bowling so well, and it's just there's always a constant threat. Whereas with him, he doesn't really look, you know, oh my god, the ball is just missing my bat, or I'm in my footwork is going off and I'm just not batting well. And when he gets out for low scores, it's just playing shot. It's fine because we know that we've seen examples of him play really well and bat really, and he really complements the top order of Australia's top order, who are generally, you've got Warner, you've got Travis Head, you've got Khawaja, who all score really quickly, and then you've got like Labuschagne Smith, who are a bit slower scorers. So I think he complements them all really well with solid batting, and he scores a decent scoring rate. So he could easily dominate, the next in a couple of Ashes series. He could be like the leading player for Australia's team. And do you think he could be like this is in the long future, but like in like 5 years maybe when all these when like Mitchell Starc, Cummins, Hazelwood and stuff like towards the end of their careers are retiring, do you think he could be a shout for the captaincy, Australia's captaincy?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, there's also I think also Head is quite young, Labuschagne is young, so they can also be captains.
And I agree. I think he has the unique perspective of being a bowler and a batsman. He bowls and he bats as well, and he scores runs in batting and takes wickets. So he could be like balance to the team, sort of like if Stokes were to be the captain for England. Do you have do you think there's a chance? Oh yeah, sorry. Continue.
I was just gonna say, I think Cameron Green is the sort of player who could be in the team as a batsman or a bowler. So that's really helpful for Australia.
Yeah, like you need that all rounder. I think Australia really have a pace bowling all rounder because obviously they have a lot of part-time spin bowlers. But Usman Khawaja I think can, Travis Head can, Steve Smith can, Lance Labuschagne. But if you have a pace bowling all rounder, that's like the real thing because it really adds you an extra pace bowler, and pace bowlers are the ones who if you're playing in like conditions like England, for example, you want more pace bowlers. And if you're playing even Australian day-night tests, so he's a real big asset. So yeah, we've talked about who will be kept as core of England's team, anyone who'll be dropped. How about Joe Root? What do you think about him? Do you think he's going to continue being captain, or do you think there's a chance he could be replaced, and who by?
I don't think he should be captain, but the problem is there's not many people who can be captain. Like there's some people like Rory Brown's an experienced captain, but like he isn't even like locked in the squad. So I think if Root isn't captain, it could be Stokes, but he gets injured too often, I think. So yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah, Joe Root rarely gets injured, whereas Stokes obviously because he bowls and bats as well. As you said, Burns, and of course, like if you can't have a captain who's barely making it into the team and could easily be dropped, you need your captain to be like the mainstay of the team. And someone like Joe Root who scored 1,700 runs last year, of course he's going to be the main player in the team. Joe Root's decision making's been questionable the first 3 tests. I think towards the last 2 tests, there wasn't exactly much he could do. 4th test being a draw, then battling out for draw, and the 5th test, it's not exactly Joe Root's fault if the whole batting order collapses. That's obviously it's good bowling, and it's also individual batsmen's fault. So I don't think he could do much for that. But yeah, there is a question on him. There is 100% a question. So that's just disappointing overall. Something else that's also pretty disappointing in terms of English cricket is the recently published DCMS review. So that's the Department of Culture, Media and Sport, the government department, publishing a review into the ECB and the Yorkshire County Cricket Club scandal that's been going on. So yeah, it's been actually pretty well, received as such. People at Azim Rafiq have been actually pretty, happy that someone is, accusing the ECB of, not doing their job, because there's no one else to check up on the ECB as such, because obviously ECB are like the main governing board of English cricket. Basically, the DCMS report is suggesting that there is deep-seated racism in English cricket, and the sport needs to clean up its act. The ECB should get limited or lose its public funding if it doesn't meet these sort of indicators and doesn't keep up track with the improvements that are expected by it. So, for example, they should set something like a set of key indicators just to make sure and provide quarterly updates to the DCMS committee. So basically, it sort of reminds you of like someone, if a little child's been naughty and they have to report back to their teacher just saying how they're going to improve. It's a bit shocking as well, because it's making the ECB sound pretty trivial, and it's pretty brutal, but it's truthful. There's been a huge amount of issues with racism. There's been apparently over 4,000 previous cricketers or something like that who've spoken to this, like, I think it's a hotline that of about racism and about experiencing racism. And there's been 60 professional cricketers currently who've said that they've experienced racism. So it's a big deal. Amar, what do you think this report is going to have? What impact will it have on the ECB's decision making, or what might happen in the future in terms of this racism issue?
Well, I think it could encourage more people to speak out about it, maybe. But I'm not really sure. I think it could the ECB will be more careful about racism in cricket, and they might have more.
I think the real key thing is the funding cut. We don't know what it could, as people who follow cricket and play cricket, we don't exactly know what kind of in numbers what impact it's going to have. But obviously we can assume that if we cut some of the funding, that means that they won't have enough money to do we might lose money for the grassroots game, funding clubs and stuff like that, and tournaments. We've got things like the under 13 national T20 Cup, under 15, things like that might disappear, or just there might not be enough money to fund things like that, and that could have a pretty disastrous impact on English cricket. And it could have an impact on young players coming up. But to be fair, it is ECB's fault. They've literally been they've not listened to people like Azim Rafiq speaking out. It's they've not listened to people who've spoken out about racism. They haven't done enough measures. They didn't punish. They didn't actually name. They didn't say this and this person need to I don't know, need to resign or something because they've done something wrong. It was there was no direct blame put on anyone, and it's a bit shocking. Do you think that the ECB will progress through this? Do you think this might in the short term have a big impact on the ECB, or do you think they'll eventually come through and just take this as an opportunity?
I think it could have an impact. Government not funding the ECB. And it could be turn into a long-term impact. If one sees if some matches, some junior players getting to for example watch matches, it could affect how the game is played over
here. Yeah, I think it's just really it's just really shocking that all this, if we go back to, I don't know, a year ago, it's a pretty unheard thing. Azim Rafiq's first speaking out September 2020, so a year ago it wasn't really a big deal. Then look how much it's exploded. There's also another issue with Yorkshire County Cricket Club losing their privilege to host international fixtures. So that in itself is another worry. International cricket fixtures bring loads of money. You've got at least watching things like T20, ODI, and even Test as well. There's thousands of people come to watch in stadiums. the I think the chairman of Yorkshire County Cricket Club, Lord Patel, said that this could have it could be a financial crisis at Yorkshire. But the issue is that unless all this funding is going to be cut if there's no progress seen. So it's up to the ECB, it's up to Yorkshire County Cricket Club to show that they're making some improvements and there's new systems in to get rid of the systematic racism. Otherwise, there's going to be a pretty knock-on effect in English cricket. It's not looking too good. I don't think so. But I think we'll go on to two major changes in English cricket. Sorry, not English cricket, in international cricket. Firstly, Ross Taylor retired from Test cricket just in this week. He played his last Test against Bangladesh and surprisingly took the last wicket to win the Test. So he took a last wicket on the last ball of his Test career, which is good, very nice touch for him. Everyone knows that Ross Taylor's average across all three formats is impressive. I think he averages high 40s in Test cricket. He's just been a consistent player over the last 15 years for New Zealand, and I think his batting, the solidity of his batting will be really missed by New Zealand. What are your views on Ross Taylor and his career, Amar?
Yeah, he was a very good player. When New Zealand were in tough situations, for example, in the World Cup semi-final 2019, he just went and scored a 50, which could help them, and he hit the ball really cleanly in T20s, ODIs, and Test matches. He could score big scores. He scored against Australia. He scored a big 200 a few years ago, maybe 7 years ago, I think.
Yeah, so this very consistent player. In terms of New Zealand, very lucky. Although they're a small nation, they have a lot of young cricketers such as Will Young, who's recently come to the team, and they've got Devon Conway. They have got Daryl Mitchell as well. Just players who are who can bat really well and can fill up the void, so they're okay. New Zealand cricket shouldn't be too impacted, but he's still a very good player. That I've got a pretty interesting fact. Ross Taylor in his career in all formats has taken the second most catches in the world in his career span. So he took 364 catches in his career. The first most is Mahela Jayawardene on 440. There is a big gap between them, but 364 catches, that's a lot of catches considering the amount of cricket he would have played. He's probably played in the 200s, 300s amount of matches, but 364 catches. He has helped a lot of wickets for New Zealand. Without if we put a different player on, you could assume that he would have dropped a lot more. He would have dropped a lot more. I think he has something like an 80% catch rate or something like that, which is I think the highest is Graham Smith. I think who has something like 85% in the world. This is during their career, the individual's career, but 80% catch rate is actually pretty good considering some of the ones that we count as possible catches or misses could be just dropping short and things like that, or ones that are pretty much impossible. They manage to get a hand to it, things like that. So 80% is really high, and it's a lot better than England's slips fielders catching and just general catching. Yeah, our slips are very, very bad. They can barely catch. I have no clue why, but even the captain Joe Root drops loads. It's just we're just generally known for our dropping of catches. Considering we're one of the top 4 Test teams in the world, you'd be a bit surprised. Our fielding in the slips is actually really bad. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, New Zealand have recently been really solid slips. I haven't seen them drop many catches, whereas most other teams, Australia, India, England, I've seen them drop quite a lot of catches in the slips.
Yeah, so hopefully New Zealand can ride the storm of which the initial shock of him retiring and fill up the gap with other younger new batsmen who can have a career as good as his. So the next thing I sort of hinted to in the intro, which was an Indian batsman stepping down as Test captain, and as you probably already know, it was Virat Kohli. He stepped down as T20 captain after the World Cup. He stepped down. He was he didn't step down for ODI. He actually got replaced by Rohit Sharma. I think the Indian Cricket Board decided to replace him. Yeah, so now he actually stepped down himself as Test captain. So Virat Kohli led for 68 tests. He won 40 of them, drew 11, and lost 17. Pretty good record, I think. Um, yeah, I think everyone's mind, the real shock is why did he leave now? Why go now after their top team in the Test rankings? They just lost in they came second in the World Test Championship. They had a pretty good Test series season over the last few years, especially under Virat Kohli's reign. Um, why do you think Virat Kohli decided to step down now, Amar?
Well, I think it's probably got to do with his batting. Like he hasn't been able to score many runs recently. I think like as captain, the pressure could be on him. So I think to see the pressure off, he's just like let go of captaincy, and like maybe he'll be able to score runs. But yeah, it's quite surprising because he's a very dominating person, and him not as captain, like I can't really see him not being captain in any team.
Yeah, I know. Considering he's been like a main player in the team, so I think he took captain in the captaincy like 2015. That's nearly 7 years now. Yeah, I'm also considering his like personality, the energy he brings, and the whole aggressiveness. Any replacement of him is not going to really bring that. I don't think so. I don't think there's enough player. There's no one like him as unique as him. Yeah, I think it's well documented that captains who are batsmen can lose a bit of form when being captain. They can the averages can go down and things like that. But it hasn't really affected Virat Kohli for the last like 5-6 years, except for the last since 2019. It has affected him a bit more. He hasn't been scoring. I think also the Indian Cricket Board would have also had something in their mind, thinking if he's just a batsman and he's not scoring many runs, you can drop him, or you can think about dropping him, but you can't really drop your captain as such, because that would look really strange. Obviously, dropping your captain would be your captain's supposed to be the main player on the team. Yeah, so the real question now is who's going to replace him? Who do you think are candidates that could possibly replace him?
So I think so you've got I think the best captain would be Rahane, but like his batting hasn't been very good either. Then you've got Sharma, who's whose batting's been good recently for opening the batting in tests, and he also has experience as captain. And KL Rahul, who also has experience captaining in the IPL, and he's been batting very well recently as well.
Mm. Yeah, so you've got three clear, probably standout candidates. So I would, before we talk about each of them, do you think there's a possibility of a bowler being a captain, like how Pat Cummins is for Australia? Do you think there's the possibility for India to have a bowler as a captain?
Maybe, but like as we've seen last year, Indian bowlers have been quite prone to injury, so maybe Bumrah could, but yeah.
Yeah, they haven't. Who would you really? Because you've got Ishant Sharma, but he's sort of been a bit in and out of the team as such because his form hasn't been too good. Jasper Bumrah, I wouldn't really give him the captaincy. To be fair, doesn't really seem like a leader. He leads a bowling attack, but like I don't think he's a leader in terms of he doesn't have enough batting influence as well. Like because he's not exactly a batsman. That's why if you had an all rounder, it would be really good at pace bowling all rounder as a captain. Like as we talked about Cameron Green possibly being captain for Australia in like the long term future. See, it depends on whether you want to have a batsman, a really good batsman as your captain, who might be less tactically adept, but then you could have or you could have a really tactically minded captain who's not a very good batsman, like Rahane, who has barely scored recently. It's been really bad form. I think he's pretty much only in the team because he's the vice captain, and especially with Kohli gone now, we need a leader. But then
I think he's actually been dropped vice captain. So for this tour of South Africa, he wasn't vice captain. It was
Oh, was he
KL.
not? Oh, okay.
No,
That's actually see that could be a move. That could be showing that Rahane might not be part of the long term future of India's leadership. I did not know about that. That's actually crazy. So KL Rahul. So then now they've gone for KL Rahul. Obviously, Rohit Sharma's injured because I think it would have gone to Rohit Sharma if he was there.
yeah,
But yeah. So I think now it's looking like your three main candidates, Rahane, Rahul, and Sharma. But I think Rahane will be not. I don't think Rahane will be picked just virtue of his one, he's been dropped as vice captain, and two, because his batting form's not been good enough. KL Rahul, see, my issue with putting a captain as an opener as a captain is that I don't want it to impact Rahul's performances because he's a good batsman. His average has been pretty good. Him and Agarwal have been batting pretty well. Yeah, I think he's still with Sharma. Rohit Sharma is opening for Mumbai Indians and the ODI team as well. So he has experience captaining and opening. So I think Rohit Sharma for me looks like the most obvious option.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah. Cool. So that's pretty much all the news that we've had in cricket this week. It's been quite a lot, surprisingly. And then let's just talk about any upcoming cricket in the next week. Next week's going to be a jam-packed cricket week. We've got the South Africa-India ODIs. I think that's probably something to watch because after India losing the Test Series 2-1, India will be looking for to avenge their loss. And India's ODI team's probably quite more superior than to South Africa's team. India's ODI team are quite a bit better than South Africa's. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think so. I didn't think South Africa. I think that South Africa's bowling, is good, but their batting, there's few gaps in their batting order.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think that could be that could be a good competition. We've also got Sri Lanka Zimbabwe Test, the Under-19 World Cup. This is on Sky Sports as well. A lot of the current world's best players played in the Under-19 World Cup at some point. From that they've had a platform to play for the senior men's team. So a lot of the players you might be watching this year could be in the next 3-4 years playing for their respective teams in the senior squad. So I think it's really cool to see the talent, and it's actually not too much of a difference between the Under-19, the quality of the Under-19s playing, and the quality of the senior squad. Obviously, it's not exactly the intensity and the pace of bowling and things like that. But for 19-year-olds, and 18, some of these like 17, 18-year-olds, it's actually a really good standard. So I think it's a good watch. I think it's a really good watch. Big Bash, that's also on Sky Sports. It was sort of coming towards the end and is going into like the semis and finals. It's pretty interesting because I think there's quite a few. Sam Billings was playing there and scoring a few runs. It's a lot of recognisable players who are playing there. So it's nice to watch. And the final main cricket coming next week is the Women's Ashes. So straight after the men's Ashes finish, you got the women's, and theirs is in a different format to the men's. It's not just Test cricket. It's actually 3 T20s, 3 ODIs, and a Test. And I think it's what's the point system for the Women's Ashes, Amar?
I think it was the Test. So if you win the Test, you get 4 points, and for limited over games, it's 2 points if you win.
Cool. Yeah. So it's different to the men's, but it's still going to be good watching it. England and Australia. England, the current ODI champions. Australia, the T20 champions for the women's. So it's going to be 2 good teams playing against each other. And I think that's probably also on Sky Sports as well. So we've got a lot of cricket to watch this week. Hopefully, we get some good results like South Africa, India, and the Women's Ashes are the 2 main ones for me to look at. I think they'll be good. But that's it from us today. Hopefully England can sort out their squad, and for the next series, I think it might be either New Zealand or India as the next Test series, or maybe the West Indies. I can't remember. But so we've got Test series coming up. Hopefully we can sort out our squad and be a better Test team, and it might be quite different to the one we've seen for the 5th Test. So that's pretty much it from us. Thank you, Amar, and see you on the next episode.